That's an innovative step recently taken as a government. The next slide. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Schools in Osun, pictures of schools in Osun State built with Sukuk process. It's not, but it's also on board. The state just few also issued a 35 billion Sukuk for for 11.43 for Gombe, 5.71 for Gombe regional roads, 17.14 for Gombe township roads, 5.71% installation of solar street light, 2.86% for what they call D. You know that. 2.86% rural irrigation. You know, it cuts across all facets of. Lastly, 2.86% university do come. That's what is being done presently in another state called Gombe State. We are still on the gains of Islamic finance for another company, Family Sukuk, introduced the first corporate Sukuk. You know, in Sukuk, we have had in 2014, in 2017, 18, been clamoring to have a corporate Sukuk, and we're in having that one in 2000. And it's federation. Another one is purple. Is for nations, for development. Capital territory. So all of support that have just come on board. This one, can I continue? Okay. A total of 29,500 Nigerians, 46% female and 54% male, have benefited so far from the federal government of Nigeria non-interest developmental financing disbursed through the Nigerian incentive-based risk-sharing system for agricultural lending, popularly known as NIRSA. In the last 6 months. Just in the last 6 months, my data showed between August 2021 and January 2022, a total of 29,500 Nigerians have benefited from this non-interest Sharia compliance intervention. Another gain of Islamic finance for government of Nigeria. Islamic finance has opened the Nigerian economy to multilateral organizations, investment, and collaboration. And I am a living witness to that. Okosu is another living witness to that. Islamic finance has improved financial inclusion in Nigeria with its attendant economic benefit for the nation. Production and export have been increased by the credit facility granted by Islamic banks and other institutions, which has in turn impacted positively on the country's GDP. Still on the gains for government of Nigeria from Islamic finance. Employment generation, this is a fact, very viable fact. Islamic finance has generated thousands of direct and indirect jobs created in the last 10 years across various sectors of the Islamic finance industry. Similarly, income tax paid by this large number of employees as well as their employers are also generating revenue for the government of this nation. And lastly, this may look strange, but it's another fact that we cannot run away from. Islamic finance has contributed to interfaith harmony. Did you hear that? And peaceful coexistence. Forget about all noises elsewhere. What we know, those of us in the industry, we know that many of the Nigerian Islamic financial institutions, customers, staff, management, and even board members are non-Muslims. So in that way, Islamic finance is even contributing to our interfaith harmony and peaceful coexistence. Now to the challenges. I know we must be happy to listen to all these gains and opportunities, but I'm not here just to tell you about the gains. I'm here for an assessment of the progress so far. What are the challenges of Islamic finance in Nigeria? Challenges. Number one challenge. Please forget it. It's important. The market share of Islamic finance industry compared to the conventional market is still abysmally low. And I think that should attract special attention of the chairman. Despite all what you have achieved, if you look at the share, the market share, let me give you some statistics. A single bank, an Islamic bank in Saudi Arabia called Al-Rajihi Bank, has a total asset of more than 100 billion US dollars. Just one bank. In the United Arab Emirates, Dubai Islamic Bank, another one single Islamic bank, has a total asset of more than 75 billion US dollars. I checked some few hours ago, the highest capitalized Nigerian bank, conventional and non-conventional, is about 26 billion dollars. But the irony of it is that when Islamic banks have this huge asset outside Nigeria, it's very, very unfortunate that all the assets of Islamic banks in Nigeria, the 5 of them put together, is less than 1 billion US dollars. That is a challenge. And this figure represents less than 1% of the total assets of the conventional banks in Nigeria. We need to work on that. The industry has shown that it is viable, it is sustainable, it is profitable. So I don't know what the doubting Thomases are still waiting for. This is the time to act. That is challenge number one. This challenge has hindered the non-interest banks in Nigeria from penetrating large markets and financing big ticket transactions due to inadequate capital. They can't. When they have big projects coming to them, they cannot because they have inadequate capital under their control. The story is not different in the insurance sector, as the latest figures from the regulator show that the total capitalization of taxable companies in Nigeria is only 0.5% of the conventional insurance capitalization. Just 0.5%. Is the story different in the capital market? The answer is no. Even at the capital market, a study conducted in 2020 revealed that the sukuk share of the total debt market in Nigeria as of then was just 0.69%. I'm going to come to offer my recommendation, but this is a very significant challenge that Islamic finance is facing in the country. Challenge number 2. Lack of adequate liquidity management instrument in the Nigerian market. As we have seen in the previous slides, the market share of sukuk is still very low, and It's not even as frequent as the conventional debt issuance. We normally hear of sukuk issuance once in a year. In fact, because of the COVID restrictions, the last one took about 2 years. Because we had in 2017, we had in 2018, we didn't have any in 2019. It was in 2020 and 2021 that we had the third and fourth. So it's an issue, it's a challenge. It's not frequent, and the share is still very, very low. There is virtually, we talk about the long-term liquidity management. What about the short-term market, money market instruments that have a short term? These are actually not available. There is virtually no short-term interbank money market instrument for use by NIPs. But here, we must commend the effort of one organization, and I forgot to mention that as part of the games. We have today an association called Nigerian Islamic Financial Institutions Association of Nigeria. NIFIAN, thank you, Okosu. NIFIAN, you will recollect, NIFIAN has proposed now 2 institutions, 2. You are here, you can see a director here. Is that not Alhaji Amao? Director of Jaiz Bank. You people are not doing enough. I must tell you the truth. You are not doing enough to create awareness among the people. When people are misleading, when some are misleading people, you must be here to tell the true story of what Islamic finance is. But unfortunately, we are not seeing much from you people. And lastly, I will, so that I don't leave this podium and they will say, oh, the left home constituency. I'm going to my other constituency now, the legal constituency. We have a jurisdictional lacuna as a challenge for Islamic finance in Nigeria. There's no doubt, everybody knows this fact, that Sharia judges are the most competent to handle disputes emanating from Islamic financial transactions. But they cannot do that in Nigeria of today because of the jurisdictional restriction embedded in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Our Sharia Court of Appeal, as a superior court of record, can only hear, adjudicate cases relating only to Islamic personal law, marriage, divorce, inheritance, and the rest of them. And unfortunately, those that have jurisdiction at the High Court, at the Federal High Court or State High Court, with due respect, they are our colleagues. Some of them are very senior colleagues. But they lack expertise in this field, and it's very obvious. Yeah. Recently, a judge failed to distinguish between riba, interest that is prohibited, and what is allowed today all over the world as a best global practice of charge of levying on a a special tribunal for resolution of Islamic banking-related dispute should be constituted by the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's a very cumbersome process to get amendment of constitution, of provisions of the Constitution. I know that. But that is not the end of the road. When we have precedent in other financial sectors, I will give you those precedents. We have in the capital market what they call Investment and Securities Tribunal. We have in the tax industry what they call Tax Appeal Tribunal. Here they said because we recognize specialized knowledge of the subject matter. We know it's not a matter that any judge can just take up, and that is why they are creating those tribunals. I think it is high time for CBN to also look at that direction and have a special tribunal pending the time that we will have this jurisdictional, constitutional lacuna removed from our constitution. May God help us. So that is the end of the challenges. I didn't want to, to mention more, so I don't frighten people. No, these challenges are too much. But I think with these 5, these are the key challenges that I know exist in the industry. Now to the last and final leg of my presentation. The gains are over, the challenges are over, and we are now at the prospects of Islamic finance in Nigeria. The following factors, in my view, will have appreciable impact on the future of Islamic finance in Nigeria. 1, the Nigerian Islamic finance industry needs to define clearly its pattern of operation. In the world today, in practice, we have 2 patterns, and we know, as experts, as players in the industry. We have what we call market-driven pattern, and we have what we call Sharia-driven pattern. Market-driven pattern is being championed by Malaysia, while Sharia-driven pattern is being championed by the Gulf state. They are all practicing Islamic banking, but in Malaysia they are very liberal. They are very, very liberal. Mostly they go after the conventional product and try to mimic, to copy that product, and perhaps introduce some cosmetic or superficial changes to make the product Sharia compliant. The Sharia one is very rigid. It must be deeply rooted in Sharia compliance. Nigeria needs to, from what I'm seeing today, we didn't have our own pattern. That you can say this is the pattern we are following in Nigeria. And from my little knowledge of our environment, of our peculiarities, of our specificities, I will never suggest that we go the Malaysian way, 100%. Here in Nigeria, people will not be satisfied. I know our people. Other components of the Islamic finance value chain, particularly the zakat, waqf, microfinance, and other instruments of what we call Islamic social finance. These will bring the benefit of Islamic finance closer to the people in the grassroots and meet the financing expectations of the lower rung of the society and small-scale businesses, which are the economic catalysts in any clan. What I observe today is that the operators are always after those with huge amount of money to invest. And you must not be doing that alone. You must remember that Islamic finance is a value chain. It includes what we call Islamic social finance. Conclusions and recommendations. According to Robin Hall Smith, the British ambassador to Kyrgyzstan, 2015 to 2019, he said, there are 2 driving forces behind the UK's embracing of Islamic finance. Number 1, the belief that financial inclusion is really important to help economies grow and to bring prosperity to individuals. And number 2, which is very, very germane, relevant to our situation, that people should not have to compromise their values when they do business. These are the 2 driving forces for the UK's embracing of Islamic finance up till today. In other words, no civilized nation would attempt to force its citizens to do businesses in a way that is injurious to their ethical preference or religious belief. Nigeria cannot and should not be an exception. That is my final thought. Are there gains from the Islamic finance experiment in Nigeria? Are there challenges facing Islamic finance in Nigeria? Answers to the above posters are in the affirmative. And an attempt has been made in this work to justify that. An attempt was also made to identify the key factors that are potential drivers of the prospect of Islamic finance in Nigeria in the years to come. What remains of my duty here today is to further provide specific recommendations as what I see as the best way forward. Recommendation number 1. The need for increased capital for Islamic finance industry in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. We've seen the reason. Hence, appropriate measures should be taken to attract more investment into the sector, including government patronage where and when necessary. It is only natural that funds meant for religious activities, such as the annual Hajj, must be deposited exclusively with the non-interest financial institution. That is just natural. After all, these banks are by law and regulation prevented from accessing funds meant for haram products and services. They cannot go there. It's a no-go area for them by law, by regulation. The brewery cannot come to them. They cannot finance alcohol. They cannot go for gambling, betting, pornography. So they are barred by law to go into certain areas. Why are conventional banks still competing with them? And what should be their exclusive domain? I think it's something that is worth being looked at by our regulators. I will tell a story here. In one of the states in Nigeria, the branch manager of an Islamic bank told me, after a series of meetings, Government House, Ministry of Finance, the Hajj Buildings Board chairman, he couldn't even see at his office. He was busy going to meetings. At the end of the day, what happened was that they said, programs are going to pay in 2 tranches. We will give you 1 tranche, and we'll give so bank conventional the second tranche. And you know the implication? They were paying 1.2 million each program that year. They will first pay 200,000 to show commitment. And that is what an Islamic bank will get. And the second tranche of 1 million per program is what goes to conventional bank. I think we are doing a big disservice for the industry to continue this way. And here I must also recognize the efforts of the National Hajj Commission in what it did recently by having its program called Hajj Savings Scheme. And I think that is being given only to a non-interest financial institution. It's a right step in the right direction. But we want government at all levels also to also follow suit. It's not by way of doing favor or giving undue opportunity or advantage to this bank. As I've told you, they are clearly bad and prohibited from going to some areas. So let's have what can be a niche area for them to grow and develop. Their development will mean better life for hundreds of millions, for tens of millions of Nigerians. Recommendation number 2. Regulators and operators of Islamic finance should support universities and academic centers to facilitate capacity building for the industry through endowment of professorial chairs, establishment of specialized academic departments, and introduction of short and long-term professional programs in Islamic finance. That should be your contribution too. It happens in the Western world. In many universities in the UK, you have chairs of Islamic law and finance being sponsored by corporate bodies, being sponsored by government outside the UK. Why can't we have things from capable and willing individuals or even corporate bodies in Nigeria? So I think we can also achieve that. Recommendation 3, Muslim scholars and preachers again, who are non-experts in the field, should please, I'm pleading, should please desist from making pronouncements or insinuations that are capable of eroding people's confidence in the operations of Islamic finance without any justifiable cause or basis. Recommendation 4, customers should not base their choice of either an Islamic or conventional bank exclusively on account of which of the two pays more return on investment or whose rate of lending or financing is lower. Haram remains haram, even if it is cheaper than halal. Recommendation 5. Non-interest financial institutions in Nigeria should invest heavily in fintech, as that is where the future of banking services lies. Recommendation 6. Central Bank of Nigeria should collaborate with National Judicial Institute on the imperative of training our judges on the intricacies of Islamic finance. And luckily, there is a precedent to follow here. Just last month, February 2022, the Nigerian Copyright Commission reached an agreement with the same body, National Judicial Institute, that's in charge of training judges in Nigeria. It reached an agreement with JNI for training our judges in the intellectual property law. They are learned, but they need to always be abreast, be acquainted with new and current development in the field. If not, Nigerian Copyright Commission can do that, I don't see any reason why CBN, as a regulator of banks, can also not follow suit. Recommendation 7, I have 10, I'm almost done. Federal government of Nigeria and other stakeholders should explore other innovative structures of sukuk and make it more frequent and regular. More importantly, it is high time we started issuing dollar-denominated sukuk to attract foreign investment in this regard and take advantage of cross-border capital mobility. I try to invite even some Nigerians in the diaspora to come and invest in sukuk. They didn't come. They couldn't come. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't come. Sukuk is a long-term investment. You tie your money for 7 years, for 8 years, for 6 years, for 5 years. And we know the rate of inflation in our country. When you bring $1,000 to sukuk today, by the time they are paying you your dividend in the next 2-35 years, your $1,000 might have become $500. Who will come to invest in such an instance? It's impossible. It's only when we start having, and no foreigners would come. I've also attempted to invite some of my friends in Saudi Arabia that we have sukuk that you can invest in, because I know they do in some other countries. But they told me, point blank, you can't come. Inflation rate in your country is very high, unless if you can have a dollar-denominated sukuk. They will know when they bring $1,000, it remains $1,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Only 2 remaining. Recommendation 8, CBN to consider gradual phasing out of Windows operation of Islamic banks. This will boost investors' confidence in our local Islamic banking institutions. Recommendation 9 is very important. I hope they are represented here too. Securities and Exchange Commission should step up its oversight function in relation to the regulation of Islamic capital market products. The current situation where SEC does not bother to have a third-party independent confirmation of the Sharia compliance of Islamic capital market instrument is worrisome. And kudos in this respect to the Central Bank of Nigeria, the National Insurance Commission, and the National Pension Commission, who have bodies of experts that are certifying the Sharia compliance of products. What is happening in the capital market today is what was happening in the 1998 in the banking sector. That it's only the players that will determine finally whether their products are Sharia compliant or not. That is what is still playing out in the capital market.
But quickly here, join us as we welcome His Highness Muhammad Sanusi II, the 14th Emir of Kano and Grand Khalifa of the Tijaniya in Nigeria, to give his remark on this auspicious moment. Takbir! Allah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammadin ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chancellor, Chairman of Company. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As the chairman mentioned, I had volunteered to come in for a very short period and give my remarks. And then I agreed to listen to the lecture, which is always a dangerous thing when a professor is giving a lecture. And then the chairman added by saying he can take as long as he wants and nobody can ask him, you know, and but having said that, I'm sure we all learned a lot and we have a lot to take away from us. So I thank Professor Alaro for this wonderful presentation. I would like to begin by, I'm going to talk about two things that are not related to this topic before I go into my subject. First of all, given that we're meeting today and given this whole crowd of very pious people, I want to ask you all to help us pray that Arsenal wins today and that Manchester City also wins, so that by the end of today, Arsenal is in the Champions League places. So this is my honorarium for sitting here for 3 hours on this very important day. Okay. Now the second thing is actually a matter of interest. I don't know if you all saw this paper that was distributed from Al-Haq, this Al-Haq newspaper, just on the table. And I was just reading through, and on page 4, I saw this thing about forbidden friendship in Islam. It's extremely important for us when we see things if we need to speak at the time of speaking. Because it is said, as-sukut fi mawqi al-haja rida. Silence at the point when there's a need to speak is acceptance. Now, on the face of it, this fatwa on forbidden friendship in Islam is not wrong on the face of it. You've got verses of the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidhu al-yahuda wan nasara awliya, la tajidu qawman yu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir, yu'aduna man hadda Allah wa rasulahu, and so on. The problem is that it is based on a selective reading of the Quran. And anyone who reads this and give your children this to read, they will go with the impression that Allah says you cannot have Christian friends or non-Muslim friends, and that the relationship between you and non-Muslims is one of enmity. This issue of wala and bara is very dangerous. Because the same Quran says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تولوهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم وظاهروا على إخراجكم أن تولوهم ومن يتولهم منكم فأولئك هم الظالمون.
Allah does not prohibit you from those who have not waged war against you on account of your faith, and who have not expelled you from your homes, and tabarruhum wa tuqsitu ilayhim, that you do them, treat them kindly, and that you do justice to them, because Allah loves those who are just. Allah only prohibits you from those who wage war against you on account of your faith, who expel you from your homes, or assist in expelling you from your homes, that you should be friends with them, and he who is friends with them is one of those who commit injustice. I felt I had to make this comment, because we see this all the time. People come up with a verse of the Quran and a hadith of the Prophet, and because we see it is a verse of the Quran, we take it as religion. And we've not looked at the entire picture, we've not looked at the context, we've not looked at other verses, we've not looked at jurisprudence. Please, there is nothing in the Quran that stops a Muslim from having excellent relations with good Muslims who do not fight you on account of your faith. I don't know if there's any other thing in this paper. I don't know who published this paper, and I apologize if I've offended anyone, but I cannot read this. I know that it has been read around, and some of the sisters are going to give this to their daughters and their sons without making this comment. Okay, so having thus gotten my primaries away, and the Arsenal thing is very important, please. I'm very serious, you know. You know, Professor Alaro is a member of the Financial Regulators Advisory Council on Experts phrase, which actually brings me to what my remarks should be, which is, I think we all know, we all can be told about what actually happened in terms of the evolution, the growth, the challenges of Islamic finance. Some of what we have to add, those of us who are practitioners, is the actually behind the scenes issues. And that's what's interesting. So I'm just about to complete a book I've written on my 5 years as governor of Central Bank. It's a 20-chapter book. I've completed 17. I'm keeping the other 3 until I see who is contesting elections. But on a very serious note, it is important, I think, that we also understand some of the challenges that public officers face when they're dealing with issues. And it's not about just Islamic banking. We have these challenges when we're doing cashless Nigeria, when we're doing mobile banking, when we're taking over the banks, when we're setting up AMCON. At every stage, there are always challenges. People just see AMCON, they see take over banks, they see remove bank executives, they see how you force people onto POSs and ATMs. Now today everybody's happy. When COVID happened, if you hadn't done cashless in Nigeria, I don't know how we would have survived. Look at all the unicorns we now have in Nigeria because of the mobile banking reforms. Sometimes when you are at a point when you are ahead of the population, you have to take difficult decisions. And if you do not hold firm, you could end up giving up a very, very good idea because people do not yet get it. They do not yet understand it. And I think it's what the central bank has done. The central bank has always said, look, you know, this is good for the system. People may not understand it. Now, we'll try our best to explain. But if people choose not to explain, we can't stop because of those people. Now, Islamic banking 10 years ago, the conversation in Nigeria is very, very different 10 years down the line from what it was 10 years ago. And I also remember, even long before Islamic banking, I think this was the organization that is called the Association of Muslim Professionals, I know even when I was in UVA, I had given a lecture, I think just a class on Islamic finance. Kind of interesting because, you know, we think in Nigeria that some of these things about religious differences, they're not. What happens is that on both the Muslim and Christian side, we have people who know the truth, or who don't want to know the truth, but who choose to manipulate religion for other. A 7-year-old boy who is supposed to be in primary school, not because he can vote, but because if they don't put him in school, in the next 20 years, these are the boys that will be on the street, unemployed, they will be thugs, they will be terrorists. The next thing I saw was Amy Sanusi says civil servants were responsible for Boko Haram. You know, simply because I said what we are facing today is a consequence of very bad decisions that were made 20 years ago. I think you had a newspaper like The Guardian, highly respected, with a story covering the same event with words put in my mouth in quotation marks. In quotation marks, not paraphrasing, in quotation marks that I never said. What you saw when Father asked me to come here, I said, look, Father, I'm tired of all this. You know, looks like everybody is waiting. All they need to know is that I was at an event. That nobody can lie about, and then they can write anything. Not that I mind, because frankly, I don't care, but at the end of the day, some very important messages get lost. Messages for the country get lost, and you end up with the sensation and the noise, you know, which, like I said, I don't mind, I don't care, but it bothers me if the message itself gets missing. So when a number of things happened, and I want to share a number of interesting anecdotes with this group. And some of my colleagues in the central bank were probably a bit junior, because at that level, the politics is handled at the level of the governor usually, and the deputy governor, and the senate directors. And the people on ground do all the work, but we have to do the politics and protect it. So I want to share a number of instances that happened on this journey in my 5 years. The first was when we issued the regulations. One day I was in a meeting of Committee of Governors in the central bank, and I received a text message from a highly respected cardinal who was close to me, who expressed concern that we're having a CAN meeting at the Ecumenical Center directly behind the central bank. And everybody was talking about how they had to issue statements and call the central bank to order, how the governor of the central bank was about to Islamize Nigeria and have Islamic banking. So he sent me a message and said, I'm disturbed by this. What would you like me to do? And I said, thank you, Your Grace. Do me a favor, can you ask the representatives of CAN, the president of CAN, if you'll allow me, and here are my deputy governors, we are right behind Central Bank, we'll be happy to walk across and answer any questions that you have and explain. He proposed it, they said, no, we don't want him. What is he coming to tell us? He said, we're not ready to listen. Because they had made up their minds, even before they went into CAN meeting, that they were going to force through that statement. Now, the reason I'm saying is that even within the leadership of CAN, we had people who believed, give this man a chance. Don't just think it is Islamization, listen to him. They refused and they issued their statement. And then a few days later, I had an appointment to the president, private in the residence. And when I went there, waited for my turn, I was called in. As I was coming in, he was coming out with, lo and behold, the president of CAN. At that time, it was Pastor Orike Jafo. So the president said, okay, please. We shook hands. He said, okay, please, can the two of you get together? Governor, please, can you see him? He has some concerns. I said, fine. And when I went in, he had got him with a list of complaints. One was that I had sent 5,000 staff of the central bank on training on Islamic banking. At which point I told the president the CBN had only 6,000 staff. and that please, my concern is that the 1,000 who are alleged did not give training might think that they were victimized. I mean, yeah, we had only 6,000 staff. The second was that I had spent $5 million training people on Islamic finance. The $5 million number referred to a grant, and it was not in cash, and it had not even been used by the Islamic Development Bank, which basically said we have set aside $5 million to fund and support training of regulators. I'm not even sure if up to now that money has been used, but that was a grant from Islamic Development Bank, which was still there with them, which was never given to the central bank. Now, I'm not blaming Pastor or Sejaf, because somebody went and told me these stories. And he believed them. The only fault was that I wasn't given a chance to come and explain. And we wouldn't have had to go to the president with that. So the president said, fine, we have to manage all these things. How are you going to do that? I said, don't worry, Mr. President. I will go to Warri. And I'll go to Pastor Sejaf. I had no intention of going, by the way. I would go and see him and I explain, but the president also had to be calmed down, and to be involved. So I told him that and that. So, next thing, and these are interesting stories about how Nigeria operates. The next thing we had was, there was a Sunday like this, and churches all over the country made the subject of their sermon Islamic banking. On Monday, the papers had stories from Abeokuta, from Jos, from Enugu, of priests and pastors saying that this was part of the continuation of the attempt to Islamize Nigeria. And that so the idea was they would write security reports that would tell the president that Islamic banking was a security risk. And if the central bank governor licensed an Islamic bank, there was likely to be religious violence in Nigeria. And we got this information, and Professor Alaro, your friend, Dr. Bashir Ali Umar, I don't know if he told you this story. So I called Dr. Bashir, and honestly, it was a masterstroke, because if SSS wrote to the president and said this is a security risk, with evidence from what had been said in churches, that was the end of Islamic banking. All that the president had to do was to say, in view of this security risk from the churches, new reports came in from the mosques, So if you stop it, problem. If you don't stop it, problem. But these are issues that happen that people don't know, they happen behind the scenes, but they're very interesting because they So what the constitutional point the lawyers had was that the central bank was legislated. Because the law said you cannot not, you have no right to legislate. The law did not restrict the Islamic banking. I'm not a lawyer, so I just started having palpitations. I said, okay, come. How can I defeat your faith? He said, you better go quickly issue new regulations and make sure that you do not restrict non-interest banking to Sharia-compliant banking. So I called Konya Jai, another Christian friend of mine, told him the situation that's consistent with Islamic legal jurisprudence and non-interest banking that is based on other principles, and that these regulations apply to the first category, so we're ready to give regulations for other categories. So I sent Kingsley Morgan, I didn't go, I sent this one to the debate, and we made sure that on the day of the debate, this day, front page, carried the change in regulation. So when they came in and they got up and spoke, you are the legislative, I said, well, what are you talking about? He brought up this day newspaper. He said, these things these are old regulations you're talking about. Now, I'm sure they would have known that something had leaked because there was no Abraham Wako DMO. You know, people who, so it's not about Christians and what's about people who were basically determined to use everything as ammunition in a political battle. Now, there were also other issues that we had. Jais itself. So obviously Jais could not raise 25 billion, and we found out they couldn't even raise 10 billion. And the banking reforms gave us an opportunity to change this one-stroke-fits-all requirement that every bank had to have 25 billion. So we had international banks, we had national banks, we had regional banks, we had specialized institutions. And Islamic banking was a specialized institution which initially had capital of 10 billion. And they came and said they couldn't raise 10 billion. They were at 6 billion at that time. And we said, look, the only thing we can do for you is allow you to operate as a regional specialized bank, not national, in order that you start, and then when you get to 10 billion, you do national. So we actually put in the regulation, and one of the reasons we put in regional specialized bank was to facilitate that, because this was something that was happening in the law since 1991. And I was determined that after 20 years of time, we had to have that Islamic bank. We had gone this far, we needed to license. And I've always believed if we license one, then the rest will follow. But do you know that after we did all of that, we then discovered that Jais actually had only 4 billion, and that the 2 billion was accrued interest on their account in the central bank. And our non-interest banking department said, we cannot allow you to use interest as capital for the bank. So, Professor, you talk about capital. The truth is that even the Muslims that were talking about very finance, all their money was invested in First Bank and GT Bank and Zenith and all those banks. They were not ready to bring out the money. After we could not raise capital. So, the board of Jais called me to report my people in the CBN. They wanted help. And you know, in CBN, the Director of Banking Supervision was the governor, South Banks were concerned. I never overruled banking supervision. It's called, it's about the Director of the PIB. Director of Financial Policy said, Governor, there's no way we're going to allow an Islamic bank to count interest as part of its capital. So I knew what, after all the work we had done, after all this trouble, we had the regulations, we had the capital requirement, we had fought crime, we had been abused, we had been insulted, we had done, they did not have the work we did. So, I picked up the phone and I just called Aliko Dangote. And I said, Aliko, I read last week that you are the richest man in Africa. He said yes. And you are worth, I think, $12 billion. Aliko, are you not ashamed that with you, that we cannot have Islamic banking in Nigeria because of $1 billion naira, and we haven't? Governor, I don't understand. I said, if people hear that for $1 billion we can't have Islamic finance and you cannot do it, it's a problem. So I said, okay, Governor, I will give that. And that was how we got to $1.5 billion. And Aliko got to be a shareholder and have a nominated director to JAIS. The point I'm making is, sometimes you make compromises, sometimes you've got to go the extra length to do it. And I was committed to it, not purely from a religious perspective. Something obviously I was passionate about. I said Islamic law in Sudan. One of my projects was on Islamic banking, so it's something I was passionate about. But just about a regulator interested in broadening the financial system, encouraging financial inclusion, and putting Nigeria right up there with other financial centers in the world. And given the number of Muslims in Nigeria, more than the Quran, if I move from CDN regulation, it's not a problem. So we changed everywhere. They said Sharia, we said Islamic legal jurisprudence. They said they did not want every Islamic bank, even in the UK, has a Sharia advisory board. They said they did not want Sharia. We said, okay, call it Advisory Council of Experts. And for the regulators, call it the Financial Regulators Advisory Council of Experts, phrase. And do you know who actually produced that name, phrase? It was not me. It was Dr. Sarah Alade. Christian, she said, hey, call it phrase now, Financial Regulator Advisory. It was like in a COG meeting. That was how that name was born. And she was attacking me for Islamic banking. I said, so they all screamed and pointed at her. You mean your state is taking Islamic banking? Sometimes you laugh and you joke, but it's ridiculous. But I think as a country we need to go through those things. And then after some time, people begin to realize that, well, it's not that bad. And by the way, at the time I was at the National Assembly, 40% of the shareholders who had bought JAIS shares were not Muslim. And I think, so we need patience. If you choose to respond to an attack coming from somebody who claims speaking for Christianity, and then you speak from an Islamic position, you divide the country. He's an individual speaking for himself. Engage him. The number, because when I attended the first Islamic Financial Services Board meeting, there was a complaint that I had taken identity. What people know was it was actually Governor Charles Soludo who applied. It was at the very end of Charles Soludo's tenure that we were admitted into the Islamic Financial Services Board. The only reason I was the first governor to attend was that between the appointment and the meeting, Soludo had left. So when I went, people thought I had taken Nigeria into IFSB. I was just attending a meeting of an organization the Central Bank was already part of before I became governor. Sometimes it's a lack of communication. And when I went to NAS, I had all these papers that had the signature. The deputy governor at that time was Reverend Tunde Lemo. And I kept saying, look, this is Reverend Lemo. This is Reverend Lemo. This is Reverend Lemo. I said, Tunde Lemo is a Christian. Chase Limokade is a Christian. Sarah Alade is a Christian. So in COG, the Muslims were a minority. For these three deputy governors to collaborate with me to Islamize Nigeria, they must be very bad Christians.
Yeah, of course. Very.
You know? And Tunde must be a very bad reverend. You know? So I suppose for me, we should try as much as possible to not to allow ourselves to, sometimes when people think like when people say IPOP or you have some Northern Youth or OPC, they don't represent the people they claim they represent. Deal with them as individuals, and if you allow yourself to get into that fight, then you don't move forward. So I'm happy that we're able to get this through, but I'm also happy that even though we just licensed one Islamic bank, look at what has happened now. Under a Christian governor, we now have 3 more Islamic banks, or 4 more Islamic banks. And I don't know, nobody is talking about Godwin Islamizing Nigeria. It's the central bank. It's an institution. You don't just come because you're a Muslim or a Christian and then come to the central bank into a religious institution. So the central bank will do what it needs to do for development, for financial inclusion, for monetary stability, for exchange rate stability, and it's not going to look at region or religion and all that. It's not a political party. So I will just make a few comments on some of the issues that came out of the paper that I would like to share. First is about jurisprudence. I think, Professor Alaro, the responsibility that you have, you and Dr. Bashir and others in phrase, and one of the reasons we chose Sheikh Sharif Ibrahim Saleh to chair phrase is that Sharif Saleh is actually the Grand Mufti of North Africa. And the idea was to give credibility to whatever you do. Now, part of the challenge you have is you need to engage your fellow jurists. And notice the challenge we have in the interpretation of Islamic law in modernity. It's not just about the law of contract. We have these issues around the law of marriage, for example. You have this whole debate over can you fix a minimum age of marriage for boys and girls in Islam? What is the position on domestic violence? Can a husband beat his wife or not? What are the requirements for giving a wife mut'ah in the event of divorce? What are the rights of children in the family? These are issues that are being debated and interrogated in the Muslim world. How do you interpret Islamic law in a modern society? Now, new issues come up. You have new contractual arrangements that never existed at the time of the Prophet. And to actually arrive at a position, you need to understand both the law and the product itself. One of the reasons I think Islamic finance went far was many of the jurists of the Hanafi school and the Shafi'i school and the Hanbali school ended up relying on the Maliki concept of sound rulings for new questions that arise. Okay? So, and I would urge you to look at that even when you regulate Islamic banks. So one of the issues you talked about is liquidity and the lack of liquidity instruments. Now the question is, if you need to have liquidity instruments that are interest bearing, will that make a bank un-Islamic? And why I ask this is, the Quran there says, if you cannot get something 100%, you do not lose it 100%. So if you cannot get a 100% Islamic bank, if you have a bank that is 90% Islamic, should you allow it to run until you can sell it? I think free as you begin to look at this, these are questions we can ask. And I'll give an example with Imam in Mega of United Arab Emirates, and I'm sure you've read the book Sinat al-Fatwa, what they call yet. One of the sections, one of the interesting fatwas was to Muslims in Europe. Sorry, Chairman, I didn't get much time. was to Muslims in Europe whether they can pay interest on mortgages. And I remember there was a distinction between taking interest and paying interest, where he said the river was prohibited. What was prohibited was the taking of interest. لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة فبظلم من الذين هادوا حرمنا عليهم طيبات وإلى what they actually river وغيره عنه. So it is about taking, and giving was only prohibited because it was a wasila, it was a means to the taking of riba. Therefore, he who is compelled to give is not the same as he who insists that you must give him when he's lending. And he therefore felt that what was haram in itself is a stronger category than that was haram as a dealer, and that was the basis on which he allowed them to pay interest on mortgages and what the world saw in Islam, where it is possible to carry out then haja becomes darura. So I just think for you in phrase, one of the greatest challenges is how do you increase the knowledge of faith and awaqif among traditional scholars, so that they're then able to think with you. And once, I know my experience, I did that in Kano with the family law. Once you actually get them and convince them, they become your greatest ambassadors among the people. Three minor points. We've talked about a tribunal. I don't think it's where you should start. We still don't have a legislation of contracts. There's nothing that stops central bank and non-central banking banks from working with jurists, with you, and with lawyers to draft a law of contracts for Islamic and have that passed by the legislature. Once you have that law, the courts will apply that law. If the judge needs an expert in Islamic law, to bring a friend of the court to come and give an opinion. I don't think we need special tribunals, and once you begin to ask for special tribunals for Islamic banking, you will have the same battle we had for licensing again, and you will have constitutional issues. But if you just have a law of contract underlying non-interest banking transactions, and you have that passed by state or federal legislation, you will have that implemented in the court of law. So I think you have to continue moving from regulation to legislation, and then have the law court. As much as possible, try not to disrupt the process. Find out how you can, without changing the process that we have, achieve your objectives. You talked about government giving funds of high for Islamic banks. But why do Islamic banks need to wait for government-held funds? After all, in Malaysia, the bank started with the capital cash. They set up a fund where Muslims themselves were saving towards Hajj, and that saving was being invested. So why do you want the government? Why don't the banks set up their own capital Hajj? Why don't you get Muslims to start saving? You plan to go for Hajj in the next 5 years, you start putting money aside, and they invest it for you until you get to a certain level, and then you go for Hajj. So I would rather have you encourage the bank to think outside the box, to raise their money from the private sector, than to look towards the government. Anything that requires the government to give support to Islamic banks, you want to start having that. The central bank itself will have a problem. You cannot justify that. So we need to avoid that. Finally, it's about the prospects of this industry. Globally, we're having a convergence between Islamic banks, Islamic banking, ethical funds, that's non-Islamic, that's one of the interest elements. Many of these you said about tobacco, gambling, all that, they cover ethical funds. And now, we have green finance. Green finance, climate change, that's where the world is going. And finance that maybe they don't have interest, but they are not necessary. I mean, money laundering is un-Islamic. It's un-Islamic. If anybody takes money from corruption and puts it in the bank, it's un-Islamic because Allah says, "La ta'kulu amwalakum baynakum bil-batil." So, this is about eating, consuming the wealth of no, give me time because I came all the way from the UK for this show. And this man came only from Islamic and Europe. So, but I had said finally, and I thought I would share this because I thought it's really important to share my own views and also share the comments around the professor. So I hope that I have been able to contribute something to this discourse, and I hope that they will end happily with the victory of Arsenal and Manchester City. And I can say that your prayers have worked. Yeah. If Arsenal loses, then you people interrogate your relationship with God. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Well, thank you very much. We'll quickly go for the photo session. And two people need to leave so that we can quickly do this. The designers and our host, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos. So we'll quickly take the photograph session so that the Vice Chancellor can leave. I want and also the panelists, I want the panelists to join the photo session.
Please discuss before the session. Mr. Abdul Mahdi, please join us.
Official photographers, please. Quickly.
Mr. Dako Mijindadi, Dr. Isaac, Mr. Abdul Fattah Mo, and Dr. Ahmed Tunde Popola, please join the photo session.
So once this is done, we'll just quickly give the floor to the Vice Chancellor. And please, while His Highness Mohammed Hussein leaves, I want us to be seated. Yes, the protocol so that we allow him leave. Please. All right. Thirdly, the discussant can take the seat here, please. Are you surprised that I said that? Assalamu alaikum. Well, I grew up in a place where there is no difference in religion. I grew up in Lagos. So, all this religious something is for the politicians. It's not for us. In the oil that we have in the mosque, I have to tell the organizer that there's need for them to bring the program to the auditorium. What is the university doing in the area of Islamic banking? About 3 months ago or 2 months ago, the University Senate approved the Islamic finance program under the Uniland Business School. So they will start awarding postgraduate degree in that area. So just like the speaker said, Professor, we'll be looking forward to the body endowing the professorial chair in that area in the University of Lagos. We want to acknowledge the support that the university got from the elder statesman like Alhaji Femi Okunu for the vertical extension that we have in the Faculty of Law. And also we want to acknowledge the working relationship with the
Christian community. I say one thing, it is only in the University of Lagos that you have the Muslim community, the Christian community living together, working together. On Fridays, you will see our brothers coming to the mosque to pray for the Jumans, going to park at the Christian side. On Sundays like this, if there is no program in the mosque, they will park, the Christians will park on the Muslim side of the campus. There is no university in this country that will have that harmonious relationship. We want to acknowledge this, and we want you to please let us continue to pray for Nigeria, even at a time like this. Don't let us take it for granted. The only thing that is sustaining this country up till now is the prayer. Leave the politicians to play their own ball by manipulating us. But let us have a clear head and know that this country belongs to us. We must live together in unity. We must work together in unity. We must believe in this country, Nigeria. Move this country forward, because Nigeria is one of the best countries in the world, whether we believe it or not. So I want to welcome you. I want to wish you all the best. And I pray that we are about starting the Ramadan. The Almighty God will answer our prayer, give us peace, and moving the country forward. Thank you very much.
Takbir. That's the address of the Vice Chancellor, University of Lagos, Professor Oluwatoyin Temitayo Onipe. At this juncture,
there is no juncture other than to invite the representative of the governor of Central Bank to come and give his own remark. And he has told me that all the time that the governor spent or the will return to us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fobi. I'm Director of Financial Policy and Regulation Department at the CBN. With the permission of the Chairman, I'll just stand on the existing protocols. My work here is just to represent the King of the Dress, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It gives me great pleasure to present the keynote address at this very important national discourse. I congratulate the companion for being consistent in organizing national discourses and providing solutions on key areas that affect us as a nation. The choice of the theme of this year's discourse, Islamic Finance Experiment in Nigeria, gains, challenges, and prospects very apt, given the gains recorded by the non-interest banking and finance sector in this decade of operations, and the potential it holds going forward, enhancing financial inclusion and the rural economic development of Nigeria. The introduction of non-interest financial services in Nigeria was anchored on the need to provide alternative and complementary financial.
Telling us things that we may find useful. Those who have made up their mind that they have enough, let those who have made up their mind that they still want more to understand. Please, settle wherever you are. Settle wherever you are. We are almost there. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The gains of the introduction of non-interest banking and finance in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. It has deepened the money market in Nigeria and has spurred development in the other sectors of the Nigerian financial system. Some of the key achievements of the introduction of non-interest banking and 2021. Increased employment opportunities through direct employment by the banks, indirect employment through the clients financed by the banks, more players including advisors, delegate trustees, sukuk certificate holders came into banking industry and the capital market. Capacity development and awareness creation was about non-interest finance was also or remains one of the benefits. Similarly, an instrument to allow the banks to manage their liquidity effectively and efficiently. Low capital prevents the banks from financing big ticket transactions using equity-based contracts that have the potential to improve bank profitability. Lack of general awareness, I believe, Prof. touched on this as well, to the extent that the awareness about the products and services offered by non-interest financial institutions and their peculiarities, amongst others, in Nigeria. Inadequate use of fintech, coincidentally, he already picked up as well, by the non-interest banks to reach large number of customers, especially those in the rural bank population. Limited number of skilled manpower. Again, it's as if we had a session before today's session. The requisite knowledge and experience in banking and finance and Islamic commercial jurisprudence to drive the industry. Lack of comprehensive dispute resolution mechanism, not necessarily aligning with the aspect of special tribunal, but we recognize that the dispute resolution mechanism for the identification of conflicts involving non-interest entities, products, or services. Double taxation that arises due to the nature of non-interest products that require the owner or the owning or the buying of the products or services first by the non-interest bank before selling them to the clients, which could give rise to double stamp duties and the markups that go along with that. On the lack of tax exemption on profits and markups charged by the NIBs, or the non-interest banks, as is given to interest income generated from debt instruments by conventional banks. However, the CBN has put in place various measures to overcome some of the challenges facing the non-interest finance industry. For liquidity management, in a bid to solve management problems faced by non-interest banks and to create a level playing field amongst banks in Nigeria, the CBN has thus far created 5 liquidity management instruments that are compliant to the principles underlying the operations of non-interest financial institutions. They include the CBN Safe Custody Account, the CBN Non-Interest Notes, Shara compliant interbank liquidity management traded amongst non-interest banks. Under public awareness, as part of its consumer education efforts, the CBN has continued to enlighten the general public through various programs and platforms in the media about the concept of non-interest finance, its prospects, and the fact that it's an alternative product for all members of the public, irrespective of any inclination. Under financial inclusion, in its efforts towards enhancing financial inclusion through non-interest finance, the CBN has created the non-interest versions of 11 of its intervention schemes. This is to ensure that people who before now voluntarily excluded themselves from accessing these schemes due to cultural or religious reasons could now comfortably access them. On the aspect of capacity development, the CBN has continued to train and sponsor its staff to advance their knowledge and develop their capacity in the field of non-interest finance. Also, through the instrumentality of the Financial Regulation Advisory Council of Experts, FACE, the bank had over the years engaged members of the Advisory Committee of Experts of the various non-interest banks with a view to enhance their capacity and keeping them abreast with recent developments in the industry in line with international best practice. Collaboration with other regulators continues to encourage the development of the non-interest ecosystem this time around, the ecosystem in the country. The CBN has been collaborating with the Debt Management Office, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the National Pension Commission, and other regulatory bodies in the Nigerian financial system to develop infrastructures, speaking to institutionalizing the process list of sectors that will support the development of non-interest finance in their sector. The collaboration gave rise to the issuance of the debut subnational sukuk by Osun State in 2013, which was approved by SEC because of the capital market instrument. The issuances of 4 tranches of sovereign sukuk by the federal government through the Debt Management Office, as well as more sustainable financial systems that will contribute positively to growth and development. This could reduce the over-reliance on debt financing and thus avoid excessive debt and speculation, which has the potential to increase financial system fragility. Islamic social finance instruments like obligatory alms giving, zakat, endowment, waqf, and charity, which are integral parts of non-interest finance, ensure a comprehensive approach to address poverty, promote social justice within the society, which increases the potential for a more balanced economic growth. Similarly, the asset-backed nature of non-interest products and instruments strengthens the resilience of the non-interest financial institutions and minimizes excessive risk taking by the banks, because investors themselves are not guaranteed to receive income or capital gains except based on the performance of the underlying assets, and profits are paid by the banks only when the underlying assets earn profit. Another important aspect of non-interest finance based on its risk-sharing nature is the potential to enhance financial access by persons that could ordinarily not qualify for financing using conventional methods to access their credit, to assess their credit worthiness. This could allow individuals to have access and resources to access finance. Also, the strong emphasis on governance and risk management in risk-sharing contracts plays an important role in ensuring broad-based improvement in standards of oversight and financial discipline in financial transactions. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, non-interest finance holds great potential to enhance economic growth and boost financial inclusion. This national discourse organized by the companion could not have come at a better time when we consider the federal government's drive towards economic development and the CDM policies aimed at ensuring self-reliance in food production and other essential elements that will create jobs amongst our team. The companion and other stakeholders need to continue to create awareness amongst Nigerians to take advantage of the numerous intervention schemes created by the federal government through the CBN, including the non-interest schemes, towards enhancing production and creating.
They work on the same committee, so you can see. And we also have Mr. Okosi here. So every now and then they call him the Sheikh, as far as Islamic finance is concerned. That is to tell you that it is open to everyone regardless of religion. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to make it for us. So we thank Mr. Chibuza for that. Thank you very much, sir, for that. I would hope that we'll only continue based on the prospect that have been announced. Pray that Nigerians will continue to, embrace the culture of Islamic finance. All right. Before we'll be having the panel discussion now, and our discussants already seated, as well as the moderators.
Sorry, I think I'm quickly dropping in. Apologies again. At this time, yes, I think I'm almost losing my small support for us. I've been giving a lot of best to support. So, you know how to say, shield for the big boys. If my chairman wasn't big and he's coming here, I think by now maybe we still would have had our father talking with us. So thank you very much. But our chairman has been here since, for those who came, I'm sure you saw him since 10 a.m. So I'll allow Abdul Hakim to continue with the panel session. And before that, please please, we have this. It's lost, but we found it. Your ATM card, Tony Ibrahim, is that bank. Sorry. And also, if you're instructing someone, please, if you order on the car, if you do follow Acura
MDX.
LND 258.
Okay, fine. Also, we'll be having a panel discussion with Dr. Tunde Pokuola. Other members of the panel are already, if you check your page, you'll find their Mr. Abdul Malik Mahdi, Ndako Mijindadi, Dr. Ishaq Mustafa Akilasho, and Mr. Abdul Fattah Mo. From different, we have, they are representing different banks operating within the Islamic window, sector that we have in Nigeria. So some of these challenges and the prospects are things that I want to discuss. So please let us give them rapt attention. All right.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your time and attention, and the guest speaker and the CDN governor, the representative. Please, we take those next 15 minutes because of time, and each panelist will have just one question. A lot has been said today. We have been educated, we have been informed, and some of the things we have loved to discuss are already been shared by the guest speaker and the calendar. So I think we just go straight to specific items of one question each for the panelists. And I'll start from Brad Fatai now, the Executive Director of Business Development South, or JIS Bank. Your bank is the bank licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria in 2011, and there are now additional banks in that space. There's still a lot. We've seen the progress we have made from the lecture, but there's still a lot to be done in people having access to finance through Islamic finance. There are SME owners here. There are people who want to see good things of life. They want to buy consumer products, television, bridges, and all of that. And they don't want to go to convention.
To be said, no matter how juicy a conventional bank proposition might sound or look like, they will not touch it even with a long spoon, particularly with the emergence of Islamic banking in Nigeria. So we address these two categories, and of course, there's always room for improvement. So let me talk about some of the things that we've done very briefly, so that hopefully that will also inspire those of us here and out of there. Number one is that in the area of financial inclusion, we've worked with women in very rural areas, and as I say, we have more than 5,000. These are people at the bottom of the pyramid. Working with them in their local setting, these are people that go to the market. They have specific days that they go to the market in a week. They come around with the proceeds of their sale. We partner with them with a contract called Mudoraba, and we've done this in 4 locations already. Here's likely manual that we believe very strongly that we need to upscale, and that's why we decided to go digital. So that is already in the works. In the next couple of weeks, we would be establishing that in a number of locations, north, south, west, and east, with time. Secondly, in the other category, these are guys that wouldn't touch the interest-based financing. And I must say that from the inception of Giants Bank till date, we've given facilities using different contracts in excess of 500 billion naira. Secondly, under this category as well, partnering with Central Bank of Nigeria, and we're indeed very, very grateful for this. We collected intervention funds and in turn used it in partnership with our customers to the tune of 30 billion naira. As we speak today as well, we're partnering again with CBN, with some customers, to do irrigation facilities facilities of over 10,000 hectares. So you can imagine the multiplier effect that will have, on the economy. Now, what can those of us here benefit very quickly? Whether you are an SME, you are a corporate guy, you are an individual, we've got all it takes. With our different products, retail, commercial, and what have you. Just be rest assured that whatever it is you enjoy with conventional banks today is possible with the Islamic banks. Albeit with strict compliance with Sharia rules. Let me give you a very quick example because of time. In the space of SME, we have this gentleman, and sometime last year we actually celebrated him. He's a tailor based in Kano. We started with him a loan. 1 machine, 2 machines that we financed, and he did very well. As he was enjoying this, he was also calling his friends. Oh, go to Jais. And we financed all of them. At some point, they got up to 50. So what did they do differently, which I believe we all can also copy? The lecturer said earlier on that Islamic banking is not a charity. That's the truth. It's a business, first of all. So you don't say, okay, these people should understand now I have a problem. So when you organize yourself in a cooperative kind of setting, that you can self-insure one another, you can self-guarantee one another, and you can go places. Secondly, also, whatever knowledge, whatever capacity that is built within the community, the small community there, it rubs off on each and every member. And with that, we can do great things. Today, we can speak of over 30,000 customers that have benefited one way or the other in partnering with Jais Bank. And the results are there for everybody to see. Thank you very much, the organizers and everybody.
Thank you so much, Fatayama. So I want to go to Malik Maji. Malik is the managing partner of Money Shelter Systems and Services Limited. It's an Abuja-based real estate company using Islamic finance instruments for project execution. Now, we have housing deficit in Nigeria. As we speak, there are 2 million deficit in terms of needed homes. And there's a projection by the United Nations statistics that in 10 years this number will double. And we know a lot of them, those who desire to have homes of their own, are Muslims. What are those products, Islamic finance products, that are available in Nigeria that Muslims can latch onto to own their own homes?
Assalamu alaikum. So thank you very much. I would like to start by commending the efforts of Islamic finance institutions so far in the last 10 years in deepening the space, the real estate space. Basically, real estate is thriving in Nigeria today, especially in the Abuja market, because of the efforts of Jais Bank, Taj Bank, and other non-bank financial institutions, including Cardinal Stone, Mr. Chairman. These have all contributed to the supply side. So while we're building houses, I think the speaker also alluded to the Sukuk by Brings and Hammers, the family home funds. Federal Mortgage Bank has a product, a non-interest mortgage product currently going on, even though the publicity is so bad. I think the issue is the matching problem, because we don't have long-term funds available for mortgages, because mortgage by its nature is not supposed to be 3, 4, 5 years. It's supposed to be something of 20, 25 years. Alhamdulillah, today with the Fund 6 and the general improvement, or should I say, growth of the ecosystem of Islamic finance, because it's not a bank problem. We need other players to collaborate, to come up with products that can address the yearnings of customers, clients that want Islamic finance products. Jais Bank, Taj Bank, they have the Musharaka products which they use to finance their mortgages, but I think the longest is 10 years, and that is also subject to the funds they have at their disposal. So that does not even begin to address the scope or the scale of the problem that is available. We need to have an Islamic mortgage bank or Islamic mortgage bank. It is a challenge in the real estate sector, to talk to our friends in the banking sector. Alhamdulillah, some of us crossed over from the banking sector to the real estate sector, and we understand the way Islamic finance works, the way banking works, and the need for these Islamic mortgage banks to come up. Because banks have portfolio limits, they can only do so much or so many mortgages at a time. You need to have banks that their business is actually mortgages. So Islamic finance, by its very nature, especially the division Musharaka, it's very transparent. It is suited to finance mortgages. It's almost, I would say, the best mortgage product out there available. But in terms of the Nigerian market, our challenge is to have long-term funds to be able to do these long-term mortgages, and which in turn will stimulate the market, and developers will build more houses. On our part as developers, we need to build more houses that are attuned to the society that we live in, to, not to just focus on the luxury market, to look at social housing, to look at mid-income housing, to tailor our products in such a way that real people that have real needs can actually afford those houses. So I think the challenge is a sectoral challenge, and there's a lot of advocacy that needs to be done both by the real estate developers, the banks themselves, non-bank financial institutions that are involved in this. But it is something that is very surmountable, and we're working on, and by grace of God, we will get there. In the next 5 years, hopefully we'll have a functioning Islamic REITs, where people will be financed to buy houses using Islamic finance products for 20, 30 years. The same people that contributed to that Fund 6 will now benefit from their funds through mortgages, inshallah.
All right, thank you very much. And I will naturally now go to Ndako Legendadi. Ndako is the head investment and research unit at Lotus Capital. And Lotus is a pioneer, company in asset management on Islamic finance in Nigeria. So you've gone a long way, you have some level of knowledge. And you see that part of what, so I'm going to be talking about the capital markets now, relating to Islamic finance. You've done so much since you book. Forums have been done. Even we had a sovereign like Osun State that has done that. But we haven't seen much in terms of the private sectors. So the venture is available in the private side for normal business people. There are people here who are interested in long-term investments of their funds. There are companies who want to take long-term funds as well, similar to what we call the venture at the other side. What are the opportunities that are available, from Lotus and similar institutions for people who want to invest their money long-term using Islamic finance instruments?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. It's a big opportunity to be here, and I thank you very much for granting it to us. Special thank you to our chairman, my chairman, and all the distinguished guests. I think it will be important to mention that as a financial institution, our key job is financial intermediation. Now what that means is that we sit on both ends of the financial requirement. First of all, having people who have funds that they need to invest or save, and having people that require this type of funding. But first of all, let's start with the people that have these funds to invest or save. It's critical that we understand what their requirements are. And based on those requirements, then we now know the type of investments that are suitable, hence long-term funding. When my brother spoke about the Fund 6, the Fund 6 did not come overnight, but it has come now. It has aggregated a large amount of funds by an investment community targeted at long-term projects. That is the nature of pension funds. We spent a lot of work working with the pension fund administration community in developing what we now have as guidelines that are operational. And these guidelines have been operational for quite some time now. We have more than 5 or 6 pension fund administrators that are already offering non-interest pension funds. Now what does this do? They have to put this money into businesses, into your businesses as well. but they can't put it into any kind of business. The business has to be structured properly, which is where you need advisors, people that can help you to build your business case, to be sure that you are credit worthy enough to guarantee that you can take up this type of financing. Financial advisory companies are, a lot, Lotus Capital being one of them, that can help you build those business cases, help you approach the financial institutions and tap into that kind of money. But your business has to be ready. Your business has to have a strong business case. You have to be a very dedicated and a passionate entrepreneur. Okay? Now, it's important that I also mention the other end of what we do, which is that we also manage mutual funds. So not every kind of money comes from the pension fund community. Some money comes from banks. Some monies come from capital market operators like ourselves. What we have done is that we have aggregated, for Lotus Capital, we've done close to 50 billion in terms of our aggregation. We've aggregated capital from investors. These investors comprise retail investors, institutional investors, the whole spectrum of the investment community, including government agencies. Now, our job is to channel that money into businesses and into opportunities, sukuk issuances and other than sukuk issuances. But we need to identify those strong enough businesses. So what I would say as my own party is that please speak to financial advisory institutions that can help you to structure your business properly. The funds are out there. It is for us to take advantage of it. A lot of work has come behind the scene, from the phrase to all the other institutions that have put together all the frameworks that we now see today as Islamic finance. We just have to take the last leap of faith to approach these institutions and be ready, to deliver on what we're promising. For us, we have our spot right outside the door for Lotus Capital, and for most of all the other practitioners here. If you have further questions around what I am saying, you can come and speak with us right now, today, immediately after this forum, and we can take things forward. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. So I go to the final one. This is Sheikh Mustafa Akilaso. He is from Taj Bank. He's a team member of the Sharia Non-Compliant Risk and Product Development. Sheikh, we have, from the lecture presented by the erudite professor, we see that, yes, we have started the journey on Islamic finance. But, and then some time ago, the central bank also gave windows for licensing of microfinance banks. Today we have 3 full-fledged commercial banks, but we have very little number of microfinance banks and other set of financial institutions. If you look at financial inclusion, 64% financial inclusion is the rate we have now. So we have about 36 excluded from the financial services. And most of them, if you look at branch concentration and microfinance bank concentration all over the country, you see that we lack this presence of financial institutions in areas where Muslims are highly, there. So what should we do to encourage Muslims to do more in terms of investing in Islamic financial institutions? How many microfinance banks we have? We have almost 1,900 microfinance banks. I don't think we can boast of 10 that are non-interest banks today. We just have 3 now. The 3 commercial banks we have that are non-interest are regional banks. They are not even national banks. So what can we do to incentivize rich people who are Muslims to do investments and be part of opening up this space for investment in financial institutions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we give praise to the Almighty for His grace and guidance. Islamic finance has been developing. During the lecture, we get a hint about we being, or the demand side of Islamic finance should be more value-driven rather than profit-driven, or say, what's in it for me? In other words, do we really want the halal? The market will certainly mature, but at this stage, on the demand side, some efforts need to be made. It's important that I quickly put this across. But the other side of things will be on the supply side. This is the second thing. He who is coming, or the group that are looking to invest in, say, Islamic finance, are they actually looking to invest just for the value, just for the money that they get or the profit, or the actual value proposition that Islam has. And the Islamic finance value proposition, as you'd all agree with me, transcends the profit that we earn. It's something that earns you Jannah. It's something that serves humanity beyond now, beyond space, beyond time. If you're looking at the higher purpose for it, and then you're an investor, then certainly you'll make it. And then the last part, the last lap, that has to do with the market umpires, the regulators. There is need for an enabling environment for Islamic finance to thrive, if at all we want it. And from what we've gathered and the discussion so far, especially the anecdotes brought by His Highness, during his regime, how they went the extra mile as regulators to bring forth what we have today as Islamic finance. Not just on a banking level, I'm talking about the entire industry. Banking, capital market, takaful, and all other ancillary Islamic financial services. So it is important that at this level, regulators, we look at, when we're talking about market development, you look at, okay, are there efforts on financial literacy, Islamic finance literacy? Are there efforts on deliberate patronage of these institutions that at this stage they're a bit immature? We need them to mature to be able to put their 2 feet on the ground. Are we deliberately patronizing them to support them? We look at the human capital. Are we putting in place policies that ensure the continuous and sustainable development of
much? Thank you so much. And of course,
Mr. Chairman, President of the Companion, Professor, Special Guest of Honor, and then the representative of the Governor of the CBN. I would just like to say a very good message from the Governor. He would have loved to be here, but due to other activities. For the growth of Islam in all. Thank you very much.
So just 2 more and we're done. So there's the platform next before the vote of thanks. One appreciate everyone for your time, for your patience, and as the chairman announced, please let's remain seated. We'll be done in a minute. Thank you.
Okay, so first on the platform, we have the first one will be going to our chairman himself, and to do this presentation is none other than the president of the Companion, Engineer Alhaji Kamil Olaleko, FNSE. So we would present a plaque to the chairman of today's occasion.
in business and the profession. We appreciate your attendance, not only your attendance, the intellectual presentation that was well researched, detailed, and well sunk into our memory. We will surely not forget today. We thank you very much. You are a professor of repute. We are proud of you. We appreciate you. We thank you very much for coming. And on behalf of the companion, I present this to you as an appreciation for your attendance. Thank you.
All right. The next one will be going to the Emir, His Eminence Khalifa Muhammad Sanusi II. And this will be received on his behalf by the chairman, Alhaji Fola Abiola. And today's presentation is okay. That is to be sent through the Amir. Alright, so we have the next one going to the CBN governor, who is represented by Mr. Chibuzo Ikobi. And the presentation will be done by Alhaji Ahmed Tunde Bukola, the former Amir, another former Amir of the companion.
Thank you. By the way, Chibuzo is the director of financial policy and regulation of the Central Bank of Nigeria. So all those policies, all of that. Right from the state, and to be there on behalf of the
this university. We thank you, we appreciate you. On behalf of the company, thank you.
Alright, thank you very much, sir. So right now, we'll be taking the vote of thanks. And to do this, I'll call the chairman organizing committee of this 5th National Discourse, Alhaji Jim Jima. But before that, we have a quick announcement. The University of Lagos Muslim Alumni, UMA, is inviting each other of us to the 27th Ramadan lecture, holding on the 27th day of March, actually, 2022, right in this hall, this auditorium, And the theme is leadership recruitment, the missing anchor in our national development. And we have speakers, Dr. Ahmad Adamu, Dr. Mrs. Obi Zepesi, and the Reverend Sheikh AbdurRazaq Alaro. So please let's join. And the child of the occasion shall be a Professor Atayur Jiga. So please let's make it a day with us here in this auditorium, University of Lagos Muslim Alumni Umar. We'd like to see you on that day. Allah be it. So right now, we'll take the vote of minutes from Alhaji the chairman, planning committee of the 5th National Discourse. Over to you, sir.
This vote of thanks, I would have to start on the note of apologies, and that is to our children, the children of the First Criterion College. We have them on the program as having to do a presentation, but then the companion should not be guilty of organizing an event. Door came and door goes, and then we do not finish the program. Secondly, our guests, including the chairman, had been wanting to leave, and we do not want them to leave without the program coming to an end. Finally, because these are our children, they are insiders, we hope it will be easy or easier to make these explanations. So to the children of the First Criterion College, I apologize most sincerely that we wouldn't be able to take your presentation. Having said that, we thank His Highness in absentia. We thank the chairman who has publicly announced me as the route towards him. And for that reason, I was already receiving letters from him. Our guest lecturer, all the way from Ilorin, may Allah reward you for this and count it on your scale of good deeds. Our brother, the representative of the Governor of Central Bank, thank you for sparing us each day. And our sister, the Palm. Point to do your job. Jazakumullah khairan.
Okay.